Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Wednesday, March 5th. Derek VanRiper and Eno Sarris here with you on this episode. We take a look at some job battles for pitchers jockeying for rotation spots this spring. It is a related episode to the position players battles that we talked about on the Tuesday episode. We got more position players to talk about later, either at the end of this show or later in the week. We're going to get to them nonetheless. A lot of ground to cover today, but a few housekeeping notes before we get started. You can join our Discord using the link in the show description. Also, be sure to smash the like button on this video if you're watching us on YouTube. And if you are in the area or can make plans to be in the area, come to one or both of our live shows later this month at Bear Bottle Brewing Company. It's the Bernal Heights location. March 27th, March 28th, 4:30 start time both days. March 27th, of course, is the stateside opening day. The Giants are in Cincinnati that day, so we'll be there watching the game and then potting afterwards. So we're excited for that coming up here in just about 3 weeks. Coming up quick already, you know.
Yeah, excited. It's going to be fun. I'm going to be in Arizona next week, so hit me up if you're around.
Let's try not to melt a laptop this year if possible, or your forehead.
Right. I don't know. We're going to have to, we're going to have to talk about how we pod. Definitely at least one travel day in there.
We're going to save that for behind the scenes and
right.
not do that during the actual show. Let's start our pitcher job battles in Tampa Bay, where I like how spicy you made this one. You think there might be a secret six-man rotation developing for the Rays, and I think there's some evidence to suggest that you may be right. So let's take a look at the projections from Oopsie, where Taj Bradley actually has the highest innings projection. I don't think I would have guessed that just based on the quality of the other pitchers in that rotation, but at 160, he clocks in first. Shane McClanahan right behind him, Ryan Pepio, Shane Baz, Zach Littell, and Drew Rasmussen. Littell and Rasmussen at 132 and 127 respectively. You think about the number of Tommy John surgeries and injuries this group has dealt with collectively. A six-man rotation does make a lot of sense. Have we seen indications from Kevin Cash or anybody in the front office that would confirm your suspicions that this, in fact, will be a secret six-man rotation?
We have not, and I think most people are treating this as a real battle. It's kind of hard to see from their spring training usage because they have 11 people with starts, including Mike Vassell and Joe Rock. I like that name. Joe Rock. Connor Siebold started a game. So, I mean, with a split squad, sometimes you'll have just a reliever start the game, especially the away games. So I can't really tell from what's happening. I will say that Shane Baz getting 3 innings in his first appearance is notable because that means he's ahead. I mean, that means there's no like, oh, maybe Shane will start in the rotation or the bullpen. You know what I mean? Like there's no question. He is a starter and he got 3 innings. Rasmussen got 2 in his first start. Taj Bradley got 2 1/3. Some of this is how efficient they are. But McClanahan got 2, and Littell hasn't started yet.
Hasn't started a game yet. Is he been pitching though? I haven't seen him pitch because I haven't watched any Rays spring games yet.
I'm not seeing him. He has not pitched yet.
Well, that's odd.
I guess there could be an injury that figures this one out.
Well, the important thing here is if there is a battle, who would be the odd man out in a 5-man rotation if they're all healthy, right? That's the lingering question.
And I think that they have options, all of them. And so any of them could get optioned. And, even Zach Littell. Nope, Zach Littell does not have an option. So if he's healthy, I think he's in. And that means that Shane Baz, I think, gets sent down. Just because Drew Rasmussen, I mean, he's good. And he had a rotation. He did nothing to lose it. All he did was get injured, So I think you could say, hey, Shane, let's work on X, Y, or Z in the minor leagues, and you'll be up here in no time. That's what I think would happen. But I guess I'm leaning towards right now, just the discovery that Zach Littell hasn't pitched, that maybe Littell, they're slow walking him and they're going to start him on the IL for some reason.
Yeah, I think this can turn into a 6-man rotation, though. It seems weird to me that they would use Boz that aggressively innings-wise, and considering that he was pitching well despite not having his stuff all the way back last year, that he'd be the odd man out. That's a tough sell for me.
Yeah, and then if you switch over to the bullpen and start to think of this as a full staff, you have 13 pitchers you can use. You have 5 in the rotation. That means 8 reliever spots. Fairbanks, Uceta, Clevenger, Rodriguez is 4. I think Biggie makes this team. I think Mason Montgomery might make this team. That's 6. Mike Vasil is out of options. Alex Fido's off of options. Maybe that's your 8. But Fido and Vasil are not so good that you can't say, you know what, I'd rather have Rasmussen count as a reliever, but give me bulk, give me basically starts, 3-4 inning starts every 6th day, so that Shane Baz doesn't get used as hard, and Shane McClanahan's innings get stretched out. That's the sort of thinking that I had about why they might do a 6-man rotation. There's nobody here that you want to put down for 180 innings and say they're going to make 30 starts. And, I think that everybody on this rotation could benefit from having an extra day of rest.
Yeah, I could definitely see it just based on the histories there. And interesting, too, when you look at the way the schedule begins, the Rays open this year with the Rockies. They get the Pirates in their second series. They have off days, I think, on day 7 and day 11 of the season. So they can pretty easily, work around
Brian Smith says Littell is scheduled to start on Saturday, which, okay, good. That means he's maybe not hurt, but it also is weird that Shane Baz already has 3 innings in his pocket and is going to maybe start a second time before Littell starts the first time. That would suggest that Baz, if anything, Littell goes to the bullpen.
Yeah, you could use Littell as a long reliever. That's not out of the question.
See, Brian Smith says Baz starts Friday. That's his second start, and he might go 4.
Do you think spring training rotation orders matter within the context of if they still line up with the start of the regular season accordingly? Because I think they try to map everything out where the guy who's going to go on opening day is on regular schedule for
opening day starters right now.
Yeah.
You'll see it. You'll see it in the news. And another thing that I saw was I was watching Zach Wheeler against Will Warren yesterday. And Ranger Suarez came in as the second starter behind Zach Wheeler. And they noted that was weird. And they said that the Phillies are slow walking Ranger Suarez, but would never admit it. And the way that you could tell was that he didn't start the game, and he came in against the lesser players, and he came in this late in the spring. So I think the announcers were right on that one. I think that you can tell a little bit by the order in which people are pitching, how many innings they have, how many innings they have is a big piece of signal that the team is giving you, right?
Yeah.
How many? Sure. That's how many innings they're willing to let them be out there. How much? How ready they think they are. How invested they are in them being starters. If you've got a guy who could be in the bullpen or could be starting, and he goes out there and throws 3 innings on March 3rd or whatever, I don't know. It's probably not a reliever.
And thinking about the schedule just for the Phillies, this is the important thing to look at. Early season schedules, because of makeup days for opening days and home openers, they're full of off days. And you can be a little more careful with pitchers that you want to be careful with because you don't need a 5th starter usually until the second full week of the season in most cases. The Phillies open at the Nats. They're off for the makeup day built in on Friday. Finish out the weekend series. They open at home against the Rockies the following Monday, but they're off again Tuesday in case of a possible rainout, right? So they do have a few off days built in. They have 5 consecutive games from April 2nd to the 6th. So if you're just starting to pitch now, you're fine.
Yeah, but Suarez may not start until the second.
That next stretch. Right.
Yeah.
He'd probably come into the rotation sometime after that Tuesday off.
And everybody has enough time right now on March 5th, as long as they're not a Cub or a Dodger. They have enough time to, and even Cubs and Dodgers, like we saw last year that series was managed more like almost like a playoff game where, like, you know, guys went 3 innings, 4 innings, and there was a lot of bullpen usage because you knew you had a lot of rest again afterwards.
Very heavy bullpen usage. So I think if there's a loser in that Rays group, even though he wouldn't get bounced from the roster, it's probably Zach Littell. I think his skills are also the most concerning moving out of the Trop. So I don't really like Littell anyway for fantasy purposes, but I think the fact that he's out of options does matter in terms of his stickiness to having a roster
One thing
spot.
I noticed on these, we're using the fantasy section of the what is it? The Oopsie projections, but the fantasy dashboard.
Yep.
And it had like Rasmussen for like 19 starts and 15 quality starts. And I'm just like, Rasmussen's not a good pitcher in quality starts leagues. I'm sorry. Like, there's a lot of 5 and dive in his history. And that was when he was healthy. And I think he may have some 4 and 5 and dives again. That's how he remember he transitioned from the bullpen to starting that way, where it was like 4. And then by the end of the season, he was kind of doing like 5 and a third. So in quality starts, I think most of those guys are not good starts, because what will happen is if they have Littell, they'll have like a very excellent 6th inning starter, 6th inning pitcher. So they can bring Littell in the 6th a lot for Shane, for either Shane, for Rasmussen, whatever it is.
Yeah, lots of options. Let's talk about the Tigers for a minute. Their situation really has 2 open spots temporarily because Alex Cobb is working his way back from a hip injury, which he had an epidural injection for in late February. It doesn't sound fun. And we've talked about Alex Cobb's million injuries, just like an epidural for him. He's like, yeah, whatever. It's as much as anyone could be on one of those. So what's left is Casey Mize, who looks a lot different this spring, Jackson Jobe, who we talked about a bit, and Cater Montero, Kenta Maeda, who's still there on a somewhat sizable contract. Maybe that plays into this equation a bit too. And then Matt Manning, who I think was my pick for AL Central sleeper reliever. I think we're approaching that point where the switch gets flipped on Matt Manning and like Matt Manning reliever becomes something we get excited about. But as far as the back end of this rotation goes, with the extra spot available while Cobb is down, who are the 2 that you think get these last spots?
Well, I don't want to breathlessly report spring training velocity, but let me breathlessly report some spring training velocity that'll blow your socks off.
I'm holding on to my sock. It's cold here.
Calcetines. Hey, Kenta Maeda is throwing 92 miles an hour.
Ooh, socks came off anyway. 92 from Kenta Maeda?
Yeah, 92. This is a guy who was struggling to crack 90 last year. He also has 8 2/3 innings already, which might be like a cross spring training leader. Let me see if all teams... Dude, does he lead all spring training innings? He does. He leads all of spring training innings by 1 out over Landon Rupp. Listen, I wouldn't base any argument just on something as silly as 92 miles an hour and leading the spring training injuries, but I am. But I'm also going to mention that he is out of options, and he's not the kind of guy that I think a team would be willing to let go. And I also don't think he's that much of an option in the bullpen. I don't think he's if he is, he's the bulk guy, and it's not very exciting. It's not like his days in LA where he was a little bit more, I'm either can be your 7th or 8th inning guy or I can be a starter, This is a little bit more like I can be your second or third worst reliever, or I can be your 5th starter. So I think Kenta Maeda is in, especially when you consider the fact that their other starters are so young. I don't think that it'd be devastating to Cater Montero if he had to go down. Cater Montero has also worked between the bullpen and the rotation, so you could keep him up. You could make that transition for Manning. I just don't think that this all lines up that Jackson Jobe is making this roster. I think that, you want to see. Yeah, I think you want to give Mize, quote unquote, one last shot.
Yeah, and it's fair given he was 1-1 and he's been making changes to that mix.
And he's pitching really well. I mean, he's 5 innings, 5 strikeouts, no earned runs. In terms of starts, he's already got 2 starts, so he's ahead of Manning in that regard. Cato Montero doesn't have a start yet, and he has 2 appearances in 3 innings, so that looks like a reliever to me.
Yeah.
But and so if you put Mize and Maeda in, then Job's not in. Now Job does have 5 innings in 2 starts, so he's doing pretty well in terms of usage. 4 strikeouts, 5 innings, giving up some earned runs, 2 homers. I don't think that spring training homers are going to be the reason he's not making it. I just think that it's going to be like politics. It's going to be like roster politics. Is that a way to put it? It's like Kenta Maeda is out of options, and Casey Mize gets one last shot at it, basically.
Right. It's the way front offices try to hold on to as many players as they possibly can.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Wait until the last possible minute until you have to make an actual decision to, waive, release, DFA someone, right? That's just the way it tends to go. I'm wondering if anything's different. I mean, so the velo 92 from Maeda, is it just velocity or has he changed anything else with the pitch mix too?
Let's see what I can do about that real quick. I'm also interested in, let me see something here. Brisky velocity. I know that's off topic a little bit, but
we love off topic.
95.7 from Brisky. Whatever that means for Brisky in terms of his role. 95.7 is just about where he was last year. I have been noticing that some of the relievers are down, and I remember that one thing that Sean Doolittle used to tell me was that he didn't have his full velocity in spring because he said it was for like slapping asses and saying hi. It wasn't for real competition. None of the veterans were taking it really seriously. And so I wonder if particularly relievers are like, if I'm, close-ish to where I was last year, I'll still have another tick or 2 once I'm like in the 9th inning, in the regular game that matters. So, what I've got here for Maeda is that he is throwing this spring. He has thrown 22 sweepers, 22 four-seam fastballs. That's a little bit more than usual. 19 split fingers, 9 sinkers, 5 sliders. And those four-seam fastballs are legit better than last year. He hasn't thrown one that was anywhere close to last year's average of 90.9. I mean, he has a 91, but they're clear of 92 a lot. So he has some 93s in there. He has a 93.7 to Buddy Kennedy. So I think this is legit. I know it'll, he's gonna stretch out and stuff, but I think he'll stretch out and he might be 91 plus, 91 and a half, something like that. And he looks healthy, and I think he's got that job. It makes him a little bit of a sleeper.
I think for deep leagues, he's forgotten about. Like it definitely makes some sense. We love the ballpark, and if that velo is back and he's got a little more life on everything, sure. I think you could do worse in the end game than Kenta Maeda, given what we're seeing so far this spring. It'd be probably the last pitcher on your bench in a 15-team league is the highest you'd go for him right now.
Yeah, I like him. I like him a lot. Actually, in AL onlys is like $1 starter or $2. If you can get him $1, $2, $3 even. Like I like that. Because
there you go.
I think you're buying like 100 something innings.
Some deep league goodness potentially with Kenta Maeda having a bit of a resurgence,
and a little bit of a ding for Jackson Jobe. I do think. I mean, this is why I don't have him that high in my rankings. That's why I haven't projected him for a lot of innings this year. It's not that I don't like him as a pitcher. It's just I don't know that they're just going to install him and push Maeda to the bullpen and push Manny to the bullpen. Do all these things. They have to do all these things to put Jobe in the rotation.
it could just take one injury, even if he doesn't make the rotation and he's in. I think they like him a lot. It's just you have to draft Jackson Jobe in redraft leagues right now with the expectation of holding him for a few weeks and getting nothing, and then having to possibly cut him if that opportunity doesn't open up. That's the window he's in. But he's cheap enough where you can throw that dart and then make the cut when you have to if it doesn't pan out as early as you're hoping for it to work out. Let's go over to the Twins rotation, where I think the back end starters might offer more for folks in maybe even 12-team leagues. I think Pablo Lopez, Bailey Ober, Joe Ryan at the top, very safe. The number 4 starter might even be up for grabs too. At the very least, that fifth starter spot's out there, and it's a combination of Chris Paddock, Simeon Woods-Richardson, David Festa, and Zebby Matthews. Festa and Matthews, 2 guys that really popped in the model last year. Simeon Woods-Richardson, probably the best name you can play in Load'em Scrabble, trying to maximize points. And I think with Woods-Richardson, like you have to look at some of the results before the late season fade and say that he was pitching well enough to he probably does have the inside track to one of those spots. I think he either has to continue pitching as poorly as he did at the end of last season, or have someone clearly be better to lose that job in the early part of the season.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you're using an auction calculator, and here's something that people may not know. I don't actually use the auction calculator for pitchers. What I do is I use it for hitters, and then when I can't decide on a hitter, or I don't like what's happening ADP wise or what's happening in the room, I take a pitcher.
That's your move?
That's my move. Yeah. So every once in a while I might glance over it, especially now that Oopsie has Stuff Plus in it. I can do some quick glancing and stuff, but I don't generally look at it. But if you do use the auction calculator, I do think that there's a possibility Woods-Richardson gets overvalued because they're giving him 26 starts and 130 to 140 innings across the board in playing time. And I guess that's the consensus. Everyone thinks he's just in the rotation, but I see somebody with an 89 Stuff Plus and his 93 mile an hour fastball last year, but in the past has been a 90 mile an hour fastball. So I see someone, and he had a 17.6% strikeout rate last year. So I really like Zebby Matthews and David Festa behind him. So I see that as a soft 130 to 140 innings pitched, and I think that you could get in trouble just putting that in pen. You know what I mean? I may have biased you in the preparation for this by saying that I thought maybe his job was up for grabs, but everyone else seems to think it's not up for grabs, and it's only about the 5th spot. If it is only about the 5th spot, they have a similar roster politics situation where Chris Paddock is out of options. And yes, they can actually pretty easily move him to the bullpen. The bullpen in Minnesota doesn't run so deep that they can't use him. It'll be a question of, is Michael Paddock a better player than Michael Tonkin? Those are the 2 guys who are out of options and would be somewhere around the 7th and 8th relievers. They could keep both if they put out Jorge Alcala or Louis Varland in the minors, but Louis Varland is transitioning to the bullpen. He has a lot of innings this spring. He has maybe he has the 5th most innings this spring. He's already been on the mound 4 times with 4 innings. I think that's a real look at Louis Varland as someone who might be a late inning guy for them.
Right, like a 7th inning guy that puts out a fire, comes back, and maybe gets a couple outs in the 8th. Like I think that's a heavy usage early signal for sure.
Yeah, and so if Louis Varland is in, you look at the Michael Tonkin projection, and you'll see, 3.73 ERA, Chris Paddock a 4.31. But the Chris Paddock projection is going to have some starts in it. Although it has 9 starts in it, so that's half reliever, half starter, or it's actually more reliever. Do you think they could just release Chris Paddock?
They could, but I think they would try him in the bullpen first. He's good against righties, bad against lefties. At least that was the case last year. So I think you could use him as more of a matchups guy and pick your spots with him, make him part of your bridge, add a little depth to the pen, have him go a little longer if you need to cover a couple of innings from a short start. I think that's better usage. I hope we're at the point where they're ready to just move on, because I'm with you on both Matthews and Festa being more interesting. I definitely like Simeon Woods Richardson more than you do. That is the absolute consensus takeaway. That's been the case for a long time. I liked him as a prospect. And I'm still, I'm just wondering if there's something kind of, like like everything looks the same coming out of his hand. If there's just something in Simeon Woods Richardson's arsenal or his delivery or his approach that makes him more effective than he should be with those stuff numbers, because he's been pretty good at a lot of stops along the way. And he's been young for the level for most of his career too. So that's always kind of stood out to me as something that it just works. It works better than it should, or better than you think it would, based on how it models out.
Yes, you've got a point here. Simeon Woods Richardson is in the 88th percentile for wide arsenal, like surprise factor, 92nd percentile for surprise factor. So he's a wide arsenal, uses a different amount of pitches. He's in the 91st percentile for movement spread, and he's in the 94th percentile for velocity spread. So I have him. I did again. I laugh about this, but I just did a straight up average of those four stats from BP, and he is 6th in that average. And the person who he's most like, Yu Darvish and Chris Bassett.
Yeah. Okay. That's the Chris Bassett thing. Kind of makes sense.
It's like Chris Bassett. Yeah.
Yeah. It might be a guy that can add some pitches and just really keep.
It is a guy that I've missed on in the past. I'm glad to have these because I've tried to keep an eye on them. But I also want to point out, though, that ahead of Simeon Woods Richardson and Yu Darvish are Logan Gilbert, yay, Randy Vasquez, Ranger Suarez, and number 1 is Pedro Avila. So it's not like a magic bullet.
Didn't one of your kids like Pedro Avila?
Yeah, well, they're kind of Padres fans. So.
They just happen to see him start a game and he pitched pretty well or something. It's one of those random things.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's fun. Like everybody, I feel like everybody has random players they liked growing up, and then they get older and they look back and go,
Mark Lemke, dude.
Yeah, Mark Lemke.
Mark Lemke, dude. I loved him.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember a couple of the strange ones. Travis Fryman wasn't bad. Right, Travis Fryman was actually pretty good in hindsight, but I thought he was amazing when I was a kid.
Yeah,
he's
like a dinger strikeout guy, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah,
trip down memory lane there. But I think,
in any case, as much as I think maybe Zebby might be moving past Festa a little bit. Zebby has a little bit wider arsenal than Festa, and he's been having a better spring. So you might move Zebby Matthews into the 6th spot. I think that can happen. They're both good prospects that came up around the same time. If Matthews is pitching better, he can move ahead. So if Zebby Matthews is the 6th and you think they may move Paddock to the rotation at the cost of Tonkin or putting Alcala in the minors, which is a slight cost, I think they'd like Tonkin. And Alcala would be a pretty good guy to have in the majors. He throws really hard. If they move Paddock, then that's how you get Zebby Matthews into the 5 spot. I think it'll be a little bit more like the Jackson Jobe situation, where Zebby Matthews is going to be in the 5 spot eventually, but it may have to require an injury.
I'm just so amped to be wrong about the Twins again. Every time I look at them, I'm like, they're good. They've got good depth. They've got a good bullpen. They've got a good lineup. If they just stay a little healthier, they'll be fine. And wrong. Series of L's over and over.
Not all that wrong. I mean, what are they?
They got more young guys coming up too. Yeah, they weren't. They just had a rough second half, man. And that's putting it mildly. They should not. Should not have fallen that much.
I think there's a little bit. I think that if I was in that Twins front office, I'd be a little bit stressed about hitter player development, position player development, and I would be really. Royce Lewis is, I think, a win, but he was also like a really high draft pick, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's a first rounder.
He was a 1-1.
Early first rounder.
He was a 1-1. So I don't know. Like you're like, okay, is Brooks Lee going to work out? How much credit should we get for Larnach and Wallner? Are they working out? Like, I don't think that Larnach and Wallner have gotten to the place where you're like, oh yeah, those are major league regulars, and we did that. We helped them do that. I don't even think you can do that yet. And Julian, I think, has been a disappointment vis-a-vis his draft cost and excitement, right? And Miranda's been okay. So I don't know. I think that I'm not saying they're bad. I'm saying I don't know. Right. And this year may tell us a bit more about their player development and other less position players we're talking about. But we got on the Twins a little bit.
Yeah, no. And I think the next round of actual like fair judgment of their ability as an organization is coming soon with Walker Jenkins and Emmanuel Rodriguez and Luke Keeschel. They're all getting relatively close. So I think if you see that group come up and as a trio, they underwhelm. Maybe they crush it on one. Maybe Jenkins is every bit as good as expected, but Rodriguez and Keeschel aren't quite as good as they're ranked in prospect circles. Then these questions will only persist for the Twins.
Yep.
Let's take a look at the Cubs, where I'm like trying to will Ben Brown into the rotation. That is what I'm trying to do. You got Shota. You got Steele, you got Tyon, you got Matthew Boyd, and you got an open number 5 spot right now. Javier Assad's hurt, so he's not part of that conversation. They brought in Colin Ray for depth. Jordan Hicks is back. Ben Brown's the most exciting guy, I think, by a pretty healthy margin of the names you're going to find in the mix. Can you tell me a reasonable story that puts Ben Brown in that spot to begin the year? Or do you see him getting moved around, having his innings managed, possibly working in relief, having to wait for the opportunity? Like, what's it going to take for Ben Brown to be the number 5 starter when the season begins?
I think he's going to go back down.
Come on, man. That's not what I wanted.
Well, in terms of starts, he's got 2 appearances, 1 start. Jordan Hicks has 2 appearances, 2 starts. Colin Ray has 2 appearances, 2 starts. You bring Colin Ray in on a major league deal, so he's in the rotation, if you ask me. And you've got Ray, Steele, Shota have been starting. They're on time. Matthew Boyd has had 2 starts already, so that's 4. And is that only 4? Oh, so then it's Hicks versus Brown for the last one?
It's Shota, Steele, and Tyon.
Race. Oh yeah, where's Tyon?
Tyon's firmly in.
Yeah, Tyon's firmly in, and he's got 1 start. So I bet you, if I look, he's pitching today or tomorrow or something, right?
Yeah.
So he'll jump into that 2-star mix. So I think that's your rotation. I think Colin Ray. You bring Colin Ray in on a major league deal, he's in. That's as simple as it gets. Caleb Killian, striking out 10 guys in 6 innings pitched with a bunch of hits allowed, and options. He's going to go back down. Brad Keller has been starting, but I think that maybe he's one of those guys who picks up your last bullpen spot. I don't think he's in the mix for starting. And then Jordan Hicks has options, and Ben Brown has options. And if there is a choice ever between Hicks and Brown, I think they might actually just go with Hicks because he has the changeup, and he pitched 50 innings in the major leagues last year, mostly in sort of longer appearances. And I'm not making a very good case, but
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
I think if it did come down to Hicks and Brown, there could be a chance that it was Brown. But the question would have to be, is it for a roster spot or for a rotation spot? If it's for a rotation spot, I think Hicks might be a little bit ahead. If it's for a roster spot, then Ben Brown, is the better stuff for sure.
Yeah, and looking at it again last year, I mean, Ben Brown, it was 15 appearances with the Cubs. 8 were starts. He got the 55 and a third innings. I think in 2023, he ended up with 92 and 2/3 innings, if I'm doing the math correctly on the fly, between AA and AAA. So there is a little bit of a, hey, if we really like this guy, we need him to be fresh throughout the end of the season. So maybe we build him up a little more slowly. I think there's a few ways it can go, but I'm increasingly I'm worried about the early season usage for the reasons you've outlined. As much as I like Ben Brown, he is working on a changeup this spring, which would give him a nice third pitch if it's something he can really get the feel for. So we'll see if that comes together.
Okay, he's thrown 4 of them. It has 14 inches arm side movement, which is 6 inches more than his 4-seam fastball. It has 6 inches, 7 inches more drop than his 4-seam fastball. And it goes 91.8, so it has the chance to be it has a chance to be a real power changeup splinker type thing. He has a foul, a ground out, a blocked ball, and a swinging strike.
We're getting very granular with the analysis in the spring training.
But I mean, it's okay. You know, he threw one middle to Vinny Pasquantino and got a foul out of it. He's only thrown 1 in the zone.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a problem.
Well, yeah, we'll see. And maybe that'll be the thing they say he has to work on if they send him down and want to keep him stretched out as a starter. But I think there has to be some temptation to say, well, let's take 120 innings from Ben Brown and shape it where it's 40 out of the bullpen for a while and then flip the switch and let him be the number 5 starter once you get to, I guess that'd probably be about June, sometime around then. Hard to roster a guy like that, especially in a shallow league, even though I think he has a shallow league ceiling that makes him worth following. Let's go to one of our favorite places in just a moment. Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I was going to see what Jordan Hicks' mix was, but they don't have it.
Lovely.
That's one of the frustrating things about spring training analysis. It's like, we're going to do this added pitches things, and I kept being like, I like this guy's new pitch, and no video.
No, wasn't in front of cameras. Doesn't exist. Only written about, only true in type, not true in actual video. Let's go to a place we go all the time, the Dodgers depth chart, where the eventual return of Shohei Ohtani means there are 2 spots open in the back of the rotation right now because we continue to operate under the assumption that when the schedule calls for it, the Dodgers will in fact use 6 starters because that's what they do on a pretty regular basis. Gonsolin, May, and maybe a few other characters actually belong in this conversation. I think Landon Knack would start on a lot of teams. Bobby Miller, it's an injury may have been the main reason why it all kind of spiraled on him last year. They're the 4 probably most interesting guys. You got Justin Robleski and Ben Kasparius as like honorable mentions in the competition. But I think with the first 4 names there for those 2 spots, you're honing in on a pretty heated competition for that short-term opportunity to be a starter in this group.
Yeah, and I continue to think that Dustin May has to make this team because he's out of options, and Tony Gonsolin is a bit forgotten about. I think in terms of monkey sphere things, like he's a guy who used to be in the rotation, used to have a solid spot in the rotation, and then got hurt. I don't think you kind of Wally Pipp somebody like that. You know, he comes back and he gets a rotation spot. That's how I see it. So I don't know that Dustin May will start. That's the question, is what his role will be. But you can just fashion a rotation here where you don't have Ohtani. You put Gonsolin in the 5. You put May in the 6/pen role. And I think that what this means for us is Tony Gonsolin is underrated and should be draftable in almost any league. I don't know if 10-team leagues, but definitely 12-team leagues. Maybe near the end of your draft, but I think he's the 5th starter, and that Dustin May is draftable in bench slots in 15 teams and onlys where you're just buying innings and you're hoping that some of them are starts or he's gets some saves or whatever it is, but he's going to make the team. So that's the kind of, and you're in a league where making the team is a huge deal, then you can still pick Dustin May. But I can't tell you that I know exactly what his role would be. I would guess that it would be 6 starter, even though they're saying 5 starters. But with off days and stuff, maybe May is just a long reliever.
I think the general takeaway I would have too for guys that are temporarily, and by temporarily we're talking about 3+ turns, like not just 1 spot start, but guys that begin the season in a temporary role that have good skills, the first 3 starts are enough to just say, let's see what happens over those couple of weeks, because someone else might get hurt and that temporary opportunity might become a permanent opportunity. So you're really just going based on skills and the quality of the team, and these are very draftable guys, even if you have to decide to cut them because everyone comes back healthy and everyone who's healthy in front of them in the depth chart stays healthy too. in that range of outcomes, yeah, okay, I'm cutting a good player, but you're getting such a great deal on both Gonsolin and May is more of the has to be in a league where making the team is enough. Gonsolin, 79 career big league appearances, 71 have been starts. He's got a 3.19 ERA and a 105 WHIP.
Yeah,
like what else do you want?
The one thing you could say is that he's been a benefit of maybe the Dodgers wide BABIP suppression, because for his career he has a 226 BABIP, and I wouldn't say that it was stuff plus based, sort of hit suppression, because for his career he has a 94 stuff plus and a 96 location plus, so the model doesn't really like him. I would ascribe a lot of that BABIP to the team. Now, there have been some changes in the shift rules that have coincided with some of his missed time, right? So, that's why some of these projections have, like, Steamer has a 4.62 ERA for him, which seems unfair for a guy who's a 3.19 career ERA. But Steamer's saying, well, the strikeout rate is unimpressive, the walk rate is mediocre, and he sometimes gives up homers, and I'm going to give him basically a 2.92 BABIP. Oopsie gives him a 2.76 BABIP and a 4.32 ERA. None of these numbers are very great, but his career numbers are. And so, at some point, you look at those career numbers and you say, "What if the models are wrong? What if they know how to defend behind him? What if there's just something that's going on there?" It's a bit of a Lodem kind of approach, but he has that fifth role, and you can test it out for a little bit. That's how I see it.
He's done it enough times where I'm really not that worried about it. I think the question is, like, can they lose some of their ability as a team to suppress hits because of the defensive shortcomings that are beginning to pile up on that roster? Is this something we still trust about the Dodgers?
How much better will Mookie Betts be as a shortstop this year after rededicating himself and saying that he was embarrassed about his defense last year? They just put him right back in there.
And the fact that they're doing it again says something. Like, they must like what they see enough to try it. And, it could be fine. I just don't know. Are they going to be elite? This would be very good. That's more of a question than anything else. I don't know for sure, but I trust Gonsolin quite a bit. And I'm totally with you. I just think he's been forgotten about as a very capable member of that rotation mix in LA.
Long term, it does get a little bit interesting. I guess Tony Gonsolin could keep that spot, and Ohtani just comes back. I think it'll be weird to have Dustin May put him in the bullpen, not have him stretched out, and then want him to kind of do a start when Tyler Glasnow needs 15 days or something. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's where Landon Knack comes in, optionable guy who can come up and go down. And so Landon Knack may get more starts than Dustin May this year. Maybe they just make a full decision on Dustin May and say he is now a reliever.
The good news here, too, Bobby Miller got hit by a comebacker and is out of the concussion protocol. A very scary situation that fortunately was not worse. He's throwing bullpens, hasn't pitched in a game since that incident yet, but he's getting close. What do you think the usage is for Bobby Miller this year? Do they use him more in relief? Do they keep him at AAA and just have him on deck in case an injury strike?
Landon Knack for the opportunity. They're going to be, it's him or Landon Knack when somebody gets hurt.
Man, it's just ridiculous depth. We talk about it all the time. They end up tapping into it more often than not, but the more they add, the less likely they are to have to go quite that deep.
Yeah, but also this rotation in particular is pretty, brittle.
But it's so good. It just is. It's incredible. So I think it's just more of a wait and see on a lot of the Knack and Miller types. It's like, hey, when they get the chance, if they get the chance, then they become waiver wire pickups. You're not drafting and stashing them outside of maybe like NL only leagues and draft and holds at this point.
Sasaki had an interesting debut the other night. I thought the fastball didn't look that good, but the splitter looked amazing.
Splitter as good as advertised.
Yeah, he got some real whiffs on it, and he did sit 98 on the fastball, so the velo was there, but the hitters got some good swings on it.
I'm going to guess that outing is going to propel that ADP up just a little bit with Roki Sasaki because of that lingering uncertainty. Talked about having Tommy John surgery in the past, and stuff took a step back last year. All it takes is one really impressive spring showing. People are like, yeah, he's okay. He's fine.
Yeah, he's good.
Bump him up. Let's stay in the NL West. Let's talk about the Giants battle for the final couple of spots. There's some interesting names on this depth chart, and we've talked a lot about Hayden Birdsong and wondered if there's just one more adjustment he can make to break through. But really, it's a combination of Jordan Hicks, who is likely safe because of his contract, Kyle Harrison, who was in the rotation throughout last season, Birdsong, Landon Roop, Keaton Wynn, all battling for the final 2 spots in this group behind Logan Webb and Robbie Ray and Justin Verlander. So who comes away with the bulk of the opportunities behind their primary 3 starters that we can very safely write into that rotation?
I know that there's a lot of excitement. Landon Roop right now, like I said, is second in spring training innings, and he hasn't given up a run yet. And he looks really excellent. He's thrown 8 1/3 with 11 strikeouts and 1 hit. And so, and he's got 3 starts. So every time you turn on the Giants, he's like, he's starting and he's dominating, and he's doing it with a new pitch. He's got a cutter that he told me he'd throw last year. We said on the show that, I was talking to Landon Roop and he was talking about throwing the cutter. I do think that, there's a chance that Landon Roop is moved ahead of Hayden Birdsong on the chart. Just the fact that he's going so deep and he's doing so well, although Birdsong's pitching pretty well too. I just don't know that like the Hicks deal is over. They said that Hicks is a starter. I don't know. I don't see Hicks on the thing either. So he hasn't pitched. Hicks hasn't pitched in a game. So there he is. He has started a game and gone 1 1/3 with 3 strikeouts. So I don't know. He hasn't lost anything. I think Hicks, it was the plan, and Hicks is the plan. And if you put Hicks in, then you're talking about, what are we gonna do with Harrison? And I think you just start Harrison. I mean, like Harrison would just have to be terrible this spring, right? And he hasn't been.
Right. I think it's his job to lose. It's interesting because the prices are pretty affordable on this group. Even Verlander, if you just look at March ADPs, up at pick 340. We've talked about being able to at least use him for the home starts. Maybe he has a little bit of that late career resurgence too, where it's like, okay, he wants to prove something. He's still doing this. Didn't have to come back. So maybe he went through some changes this offseason.
Great landing point for him, and I think he's reshaping his curve. He says that could be part of it. I think a slightly different location strategy on a fastball could be part of it. I think after a season like he had last year, he's probably has a more open mind to changes than he has in the past, and that might be really good for him. Plus, the home park is just a really good situation for him. We picked him in Devil's Rejects in like the 5th round after 28 keepers and 20 teams. So. Like with the 610th pick or something.
Scrap heap city.
Yeah, so I'm happy with Verlander late in things. I think he's a great draft and hold pitcher. He's going to give you some innings. You can use him at home. I'm happy with Hicks, although I do notice, we talked about this in the group chat a little bit about how, Hicks' strikeout rate does push back on his value in a weekly league. You're gonna put Hicks in for a start, and he might give you 5 innings, no win, 3 strikeouts, and be worth less than a reliever that got in there 3 times and got 8 strikeouts and maybe vulture to win,
I'm gonna make a galaxy brain argument. Well, maybe it's not galaxy brain. Probably is. It's my argument. What if Jordan Hicks is a little bit like mid-career Nathan Eovaldi, or even earlier career Nathan Eovaldi? Remember when Nathan Eovaldi kind of broke through as a starter, and it was always underwhelming strikeout rates? I think he ran a sub 20% K rate 6 straight years in the big leagues from 2011 to 2016. He was hurt, came back in 2018, and he's been 22% or better every year since. And I say this because I think for a while, Nathan Eovaldi threw hard and just didn't get the swing and miss you'd expect. And some of that's movement on secondary, some of that's just the shape of the fastball, like all sorts of things that we know a lot more about now than we did back in 2011 when it started for him. But is there also something to making the move out of the bullpen, going back to a starter's arsenal that just takes a little bit more time? Because the raw stuff for Jordan Hicks is good. And I keep thinking that it's almost like a late bloomer situation where there might be a little more ceiling, a little more he can still do that we haven't seen yet. I just wonder if he's going to be less of a liability in strikeout rate situations over time because he continues to tweak things along the way.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. You'd want him to have, what Eovaldi did though was add pitches, right? And he added a splitter, and Hicks added a splitter recently, and got so good with it he could throw it more, and basically hid his big fastball. And I think that there is something to that, because what you see with Hicks as a starter was he's running 40 to 50% sinker usage, and then when he went back to the bullpen, it was 60 to 80% sinker usage. So that's where he tends to. He wants to throw the sinker all the time and throw the slider in 2 strike counts and just blow people away with his velo. That's who he used to be. And as a starter, you could see that sinker usage dip down to 45% if he pushes the fastball percentage, the four-seam fastball percentage, to 10%. And so he can play around with the knobs on there. I think maybe a cutter or some an extra pitch would be nice to hear about in the spring. But just even with the existing 4-pitch mix he has, he could turn up the dial on the slider, turn up the dial on the four-seam, and be more sort of 25, 25, 25, or, obviously more sinkers than that. But, he could be more of a wide arsenal guy than he has been so far. So, even the projections say the more strikeouts are coming, more like 22, 23%. If he gets to 23%, that's average strikeouts.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. Because when you watch him, you're like, this should get plenty of swing and miss. Like there's enough there for him to work with.
And he really obviously just ran out of gas last year. I mean, the velo was just going down. And I think that actually makes him easy to pick up. You pick him up, you watch the velo. If the velo starts dropping, you're out.
Right. And just like Verlander, you're looking at the home park and saying, I'm going to probably use him at home in deeper leagues at least, maybe not in 10-teamers, but I think Jordan Hicks is getting the Lodem tag right now. I think he's in. I think he's a Lodem player I actually like.
I can't give it to Kyle Harrison the same way, though. I don't know what it is. He's got this weird high spin efficiency, low slot that pitching coaches tell me it's really hard to teach him secondary pitches. I know he's throwing a cutter now. Maybe the cutter will help him, but even if he has a cutter, he has an interesting four seam. Let's say give him an interesting cutter. He has a terrible slurve and a terrible changeup. Like what? How highly should we rate a guy like that?
Not very highly.
Yeah, he doesn't have good command either. So I'm not. I'd be more interested in Hicks than Harrison. And if I'm circling someone that loses their job to Birdsong or Roop, it would be Harrison. But I don't think it'll happen this spring.
I don't really know what you do with Harrison long term if he doesn't pick up velocity either. If it's hard to add other pitches.
Some idea that his velo was better this spring. So
that would help if he ticked up even 1.5 per hour in the four seamer. We get the 94 instead of 92.5. That would help quite a bit. But yeah, man, it's not a profile I've been targeting so far. I think I'm with you on Hicks being the later option that I like of those choices.
And I love Roop. He has a really good breaking ball. Now he has a good cutter. He's widening his arsenal, but he has 2 options. And I'm a little afraid, despite his usage, either he's going to go down and they're going to be like, yeah, you're like our number 1 starter if we need one, or he goes into the Jake Junis role.
Oh, yeah. The possibility of more pitches is lurking there. Like Junis is just narrowed it down as like, I'm a reliever. This is all I'm going to do.
But Junis has been in between his whole career. Mm-hmm. He's been a starter, and Roop has like got that great breaking ball, a little bit like Junis. Maybe the cutter gives him what he needs against lefties. That's definitely what's happened in the spring. He's been throwing the cutter a ton. If you watch him, it's the harder, smaller breaking ball, and it's been pretty good.
Roop to me feels like one of the guys that it was Sean Jelly last year. Every time I watched the Giants in the middle innings, Sean Jelly was pitching. I was like, oh, yeah, there's Jelly. Great. I think Roop's more like that, kind of a glue guy on the staff that ends up kind of bouncing between roles, but more multi-inning relief and less full-time starter. It's more like, oh, he's stretched out enough. We need a starter. We had to scratch somebody. Roop's getting the start today. I think that's probably
lest
how it
this
lands.
be all vibes based. Like, you can see that the stuff loss on his fastballs aren't that good. So he's kind of like, he's like one of these guys with like, I've got a really good breaking ball. And you're like, yes.
Yes, and
what else? Yeah.
Whoop. Bumped Eno right out of the show right there for a second. If you're watching us on YouTube, misclicking. So we've got time for maybe one or two more job battles. Want to pick up some scraps from yesterday, or do you want to try to dig into a couple more pitching battles?
I think we can leave some hitters for maybe for Friday or for Thursday. But I had some other notes that I thought were interesting. I mean, like the White Sox, dude. Do you know what my note is for the White Sox? I have it right here. Do you see it? It's the first word says Jesus.
Yeah. you were not thrilled when you opened up that depth chart.
Well, it's partially because what we're using, and this is a pretty cool thing. We'll put it in the show notes. But John Becker has this, this roster battle sheet, and it kind of has. He's highlighted the guys are out of options, and so he has locks. And the reason I responded with the Jesus is he has Martin Perez as the only lock on the White Sox. I was like, okay,
that's probably right.
I don't know.
As the only lock. I mean, yeah, you can. What's this? Does he have another category on that sheet?
No. So it's almost kind of locks or
near
battling.
locks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, he doesn't. He just has locks or battling. So. Yeah. So, I could see why if you had to really sort them into two boxes, maybe you do that. And maybe it's a comment on the quality. But, before I even looked at starts and now even having looked at starts, I think Davis Martin, Sean Burke, and Jonathan Cannon are I think they're locks. So, yeah, because Davis Martin was in the rotation last year. Sean Burke was in the rotation to end the season last year. He's got 2 starts. He's got more innings than anybody else on the team, other than Nick Nastrini, who hasn't started a game. So that means Nick Nastrini is pitching against the second wave of hitters, not the first. And that actually means a little bit. And so Davis Martin, Sean Burke are doing everything you asked them to. Cannon started a game, and Cannon was in the rotation last year. So that's enough for me. That does leave one spot. And I don't know how interesting it is because of the quality of players, but Shane Smith has 2 starts, hasn't pitched very well, but he's out of options. So they may just keep him in there because he's out of options. I think Thorpe is coming back from injury. Nastrini, like I said, is pitching against second string guys. So, it's Smith versus Iriarte and Wilson. I don't even know who Wilson is.
Bryce Wilson.
Bryce Wilson. Yeah, okay. Bryce Wilson hasn't started a game, so he's pitching against second guys. If I was like trying to win this year, I would probably put Bryce Wilson as my 5. But and Iriarte hasn't started a game either, so they may just Shane Smith because he's out of options and they want to see if they found something.
And Smith was a Rule 5 pick, so they have to send him back to the team they took him from if they don't keep him on the active roster. So
I think
sneak
him into the bullpen as their long guy. And
they're so bad they can keep a Rule 5 pick hidden on that roster all season. Like there should be no headaches whatsoever trying to actually make that happen.
But with like Iriarte and Nastrini, you don't necessarily want to keep them on the roster in a weird role because they have real things to work on.
Yep.
Iriarte has 5 walks in 4 1/3, and Nick Nastrini doesn't. Nick Nastrini has 1 walk this spring. My God. I guess if he's figured something out command-wise, Nastrini could be the 5th starter and Shane Smith makes it. So, and if Nick Nastrini really has figured out something command-wise, then you should be somewhat interested. He has a good fastball, and if he can, move the slider into league average territory, he could be a league average starter maybe. So there's something there, but perfect for the end of the show. I mean,
Davis Martin's projection's not terrible, so I could see some deeper league occasional dart throws there.
I picked him in Devil's Rejects. I've got shares of Martin. I actually think he's a decent pitcher. I think he might, him and Burke are guys that I'm picking for even 15-team league benches. I want to see what they have. There's some like roster battles that people might report as roster battles that I just don't think are roster battles. So like my example for this is the Guardians. There's, people maybe excited about Cantillo or who's another guy that's a young guy for them.
Slade Ciccone,
yeah. I'm excited about both in long term, but Tristan McKenzie's out of options. And in the sort of monkey sphere politics aspect of this, he used to have a rotation spot. So I think they give him, it's a little bit like Mize. Hey, you get one more shot. I have a note for the Royals that says one spot for Bubic, Marsh, and Stripling, and then a bunch of Z's. What does these Z's mean?
I didn't put those Z's in, did you?
I put the Z's in, yeah. Because I don't care.
I think Bubic is good. I think he's interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess he's load him too.
He has a thing for the Astros where he says it's Wesnenski, Gordon, or Gusto, which is fun to say, but I don't think that's a battle. And do you think that there's a real battle in Angels camp between Detmers, Dana, and Kohanowitz? Kohanowitz, the velo is up a little bit, and he has slightly more strikeouts than usual, which is usually almost none. Caden Dana, I've actually watched twice, and he does have a good slider, but I do get real like young Detmers vibes. So, and he's been knocked around, and I'm not sure the fastball is good shape. So if I'm looking at this and I'm the Angels, it's a little bit like Mize too. It's like give Detmers one last shot. If it doesn't work out, then we can go and start going through the other ones.
Then we start getting the Reed Detmers gets traded somewhere else and maybe gets fixed by a different organization or something along the way. The other one that I thought was interesting before we go is Atlanta. Who's the number 5 starter until Spencer Strider's back? Is it Ian Anderson? Is it AJ Smith-Shawver? Is it Bryce Elder? Like who do you think takes that spot temporarily? Because it would fit into the might be good enough to keep a spot if someone else gets hurt before Strider's back or once Strider's back.
Is there somebody you're already saying that's in? Who's their 4th starter? Because Becker has Sale, Ronaldo Lopez, and Spencer Schwellenbach as locks.
Yep.
Who are you putting 4?
That would be
Grant Holmes. Yeah, okay. Ian Anderson is out of options. And I hate to harp on this, but the Braves are not the kind of team that are just going to let Ian Anderson go.
You wouldn't think. I mean, they tried reliever Ian Anderson yet? I'm not sure it's going to go great, but I think that's one other way. Or just make him the long guy.
I have been watching. I watched Smith-Shawver yesterday, and I'm going to see if I can get this off of Savant too. But Smith-Shawver looked like he was throwing a tighter breaking ball. Like he's been kind of in a search for a good slider because he has that big curveball. I'm not going to get any pitch type information. Thank you.
Was he trying to throw
training?
Did you think it looked like a gyro?
Yeah. It either was a gyro or a cutter, and it looked okay. It looked pretty good. He even threw one middle that a hitter swung at and fouled it off, and was kind of like annoyed that they fouled it off. Which it's like either way, right? It's like either they felt like, oh, that was an easy pitch, I should have slammed, or it was actually a pretty good pitch. In terms of what's happening this spring, you've got Smith-Shawver with 4 innings, Bryce Elder with 7 innings, Ian Anderson with 2 starts, a 1.93 ERA, but 1 strikeout and 4 2/3. I still think it's doing enough to start the season as the 5th starter. So I don't see that as too much of a battle. I did have one last one I wanted to hit real quick. Where was it?
I don't know, man. Aaron Ashby's hurt again, though.
Rangers.
Yeah.
So Eovaldi, DeGrom, Gray, and Mali. If that's the 4, they only have 1 spot for Cody Bradford, Dane Dunning, Kumar Rocker, and Jack Leiter. Now, let me see if I have any fastball numbers on Malley, because he did not get his stuff back last year. I do have fastball numbers on Malley. He is 91-1.
Not good.
He still hasn't gotten his stuff back. So there is a little bit of daylight there, I think, for Texas, where Cody Bradford and Kumar Rocker can make it, and Tyler Malley goes to the pen. or
Really?
maybe
Yeah.
is injured. So anyway, that's something to watch. I don't know if it's a battle per se. It's just, and the Rangers could, I don't know if they'd release Smalley. I don't know I think there may be like a shadow IL thing situation where like, oh, he's not good. Something's barking. But the Rangers, I think there's some pressure on them to be better this year.
Yeah, I think they will be,
spent
though.
a lot.
Spent a lot of money,
but
and they won the title 2 years ago.
Right, but wouldn't you also want to like put Kumar Rocker out there?
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
But that goes back into the roster politics and options and who's making money and who's not, and those things at the beginning of the season I think can still be factors as well. But yeah, man, it's interesting. A lot of good battles out there. I mean, I think the Padres, Kyle Hart, Matt Waldron, Randy Vasquez for the number 5 starter, at least for home streamers and deeper leagues, that one's worth watching. It is surprising as the D-backs get further into camp and they're still healthy. Ryan Nelson just looks like an odd man out for the rotation because they've got Burns, Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Erod, Brandon Pfaadt as their starting 5. So Nelson to the pen or Nelson to AAA seems like that's the plan for them. So there's some surprises right now. And then I say that
I
I'm like,
want to know why Kyle Hart hasn't pitched yet.
He signed pretty late, so I don't know. Maybe it's got something to do with that. But 3 weeks before opening day, a lot of stuff can still go wrong as far as guys just tweaking stuff and needing to open the year on the IL. So what looks like a healthy depth chart right now might not be healthy once we get to the games that count.
You know what we're in right now? It's a little bit of a weird spot. It's like we've done all the sort of pre-spring training prep work. We're in the April of spring training.
Yes,
which is like it's too early. Like I have tried to like look at some results and stuff. It's too early to look at a lot of that stuff. Like you've been making fun of me for looking at Ben Brown's fourth.
There's a foul ball on the changeup.
Yeah, but it's like we are getting some information, and so we have to like kind of try and look at it. April is always the toughest month of the season for me for that reason. It's because it's too early to make decisions on a lot of things, but you have to look. And, one of my biggest April tools is Stuff Plus, which is not available to us in a lot of ways. I am trying to work on getting spring training Stuff Plus numbers out there to subscribers on the Google Doc and for you guys to listen here. So that's part of it. But even if we have that, it won't be complete because we don't get data from, 60% of the games.
Most of Florida and old parks in Arizona. Yeah, it's a bit of a frustrating thing. On our way out the door, a couple reminders. We got a pitcher breakout piece that you dropped this week, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's up
6
now.
breakout pitchers, yeah.
Yep.
Deep league hitters are coming out soon.
Nice. My top 300 hitters got published. That's up. So you can check out those rankings. Lots of custom tools available at theathletic.com/rates and barrels. Gets you a subscription if you don't have one already. Just a reminder, you can join the Discord with the link in the show description. Honing in on our listener league format, probably going to be a pick 6 contest this year. We're weighing some options for 2026 already as well. So if you got ideas even for next year, we'll take them. It's good to file those away and plan ahead. As we have learned over time, we should plan ahead a little bit more with some of the non-show related stuff that we like to do because time always sneaks up on us this time of year. Thanks to Brian Smith for producing this episode. You can find us on Bluesky, Sarris.bsky.social. I'm DVR.bsky.social. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We are back with you on Thursday.
Thanks for listening.